One more thing. What if the Mavericks win in 5 games? What would have to happen? What if the Celtics win in 5 games? What would happen then? We'll talk about all that and more. Dana Larson on today's One More Thing right now.
I'm here because I have to be.
Dallas is going to get a seat at the table.
That's it. It's me versus the machine.
Don't let his whiteness take away from his quickness.
You can rest later. You're young.
I'm in recovery here.
Wait. One more thing.
Yeah, welcome. You're still locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and your best friend covering the Dallas Mavericks for the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today, I'm joined by Dana Larson, Valley Sports Southwest, to talk about what the Mavericks would have to do to win in 5 games, what the Celtics would have to do to win in 5 games, what would have to happen in the Mavs. Talk about a bunch of other stuff, too, around this Mavs-Celtics finals. But Dana, what you got for me?
4 wins to go. 2 teams left. One more thing. Nick,
Yes.
I never done one more thing, I don't think. Thanks for having me.
We didn't have guests. I didn't have guests on it before this week. But I'm relying on the people that got us here. Reggie was on the other day, and now Dana today. So if you haven't listened to the episode with Isaac, go ahead and listen to that one. I did that earlier today. The crossover with John Corrales earlier this week. Check out that episode as well. But yeah, let's get into this. I got some statements, some what if statements, and we'll start going through how, like, what if. So let's start with the good one. As the eternal optimist, the ray of sunshine on Locked On Mavs, Dana. What if the Mavs win the finals in 5 games? What would have had to happen?
Okay, by the way, I saw the movie If in preparation for this.
Okay.
So come to find out, it's not about basketball at all. However, it did get my imagination really whirling. And I got so excited. I was thinking about the Mavericks winning in 5, which would be unbelievable. And I would be blown away if this were to happen. I would be gobsmacked if this were to happen, because the Boston Celtics have barely lost 4 games, over months of a season, it feels like. In fact, it has taken them weeks, in fact, to get to the point where they're going to lose 4 games. And you're asking them to lose 4 games in 5. That's basically, only going to take a week and a half, 2 weeks plus. And I love the idea of this, obviously, for the Mavericks, because it will mean a lot of things. I think it will mean that they were able to take advantage of a team that has had this pressure on them for 2 years now, building since the loss in the NBA Finals a couple years ago, and getting bounced out of the East Finals last year, not even getting back, right? Huge. And so there's this huge weight on them and the pressure to do it. And it would prove that, the cakewalk postseason run for them was no preparation for the mighty Mavs. The Mavs who have, been going through all of these big time opponents to get to this point, and then showing they're not afraid of anyone. So the idea that the Mavericks come into this with the best player on the planet, if they do win in 5, guess who's going to be carrying that MVP trophy, right? It's going to be Luka. Kyrie will have,
because Luka will give it. Luka will give it to him.
He'll hand it off to him. That's true. Kyrie will have shut out all the noise. He will have worked through all of that. There's a couple of things I think too that'll have to happen, like strategically. Celtics opponents don't get to shoot corner threes. If you look at the numbers, they don't allow that to happen very often. The Mavericks are going to need that to happen. They're going to have to find a way to get that done. They're going to have to find a way to win on the boards, because Boston keeps teams off the glass, keeps them from getting second chance points. That's going to mean a rookie center is going to be a difference maker in an NBA Finals, because Dereck Lively has been that on the glass. And I think they're going to have to get to the free throw line, and they're going to have to make those free throws. Those are things that Boston defensively is really, really good at keeping their opponents from doing. But I think if the Mavericks can make a statement and dominate a series in the finals, like you're saying, they could, if they win in 5, I think those are some of the things that we would be talking about afterwards.
Yeah, this whole scenario is, what if the Mavs just dominate this? And what if it's exactly like the Timberwolves series where you go, oh man, this team just cannot match up? I think your first point about the pressure is really interesting, because there has to be more pressure on the Celtics than on the Mavs. The Celtics come in And there was a troll tweet recently that I had some fun with on Twitter, but there's a troll tweet from a Celtics fan account that says, oh, the Celtics, they're the underdog. Everybody's picking against them because there's one show on FS1 that picked two hosts on it picked the Mavs. And he's like, oh, the Celtics are the underdogs, blah, blah, blah. They are not. This Celtics team has come in 64 wins, number 1 offense in the NBA in the regular season, number 3 defense in the NBA in the regular season. They've been here before. They were in the finals, like you said, 2 years ago. They've made the Eastern Conference Finals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of the last 8 years. Like they have more experience. They have more, maybe Kyrie has more experience than some of the other players on the Celtics, but overall, like team for team, player for player, Celtics have way more experience. The thing is, though, the Mavs have the best player in the series. So, if that equals out, then all of a sudden you're talking about the Mavs. The Mavs could come away with some wins there, but the pressure is all on the Celtics, and the pressure is on Tatum to finally come through and win it after he's been there now. For Luka, this is like his first opportunity. So you look at it as this is an opportunity for you. This is not like, all right, you've got to win or else you're not showing us anything.
Yeah, this is like a feel-good story to this point, right?
Right.
It's this Mavericks team who couldn't even make the playoffs last year. They couldn't even, get their 2 superstars on the same page. Look what they've done so quickly, and now here they are. So it's like, oh, they're in the finals. This is the cherry on top. It's a bonus. So you're right. It doesn't feel like there's pressure for the Mavericks, but on the flip side of that, they don't want to just be happy to be here, right? So that's going to be their motivation, is to prove that they aren't just happy to have gotten to this point. But they certainly could take advantage of a Boston team that might be feeling the heat at this point.
Yeah, the 3-point shooting you mentioned too. I mean, it's going to be such a 3-point battle between these two teams. I think the Mavs, if they were going to win in 5, I think they would have to maybe win the 3-point battle, like at least 3 of those games, because the Celtics have lost 2 games in the playoffs, and they both came when the other team won the 3-point battle by 5 or more. The Heat hit 11 more threes than the Celtics did in their one game that they won. The Cavs hit 5 more threes than the Celtics in the one game that they won. Like the Mavs win the 3-point battle, which is, I can't imagine how the Mavs would do it. Luka would have to hit a bunch. They would just have to get a ton of just open shots. The Celtics would have to help off of the corners, like you mentioned, and the Mavs would have to knock down a bunch of those between PJ Washington and Derrick Jones Jr. The Celtics just are going to get up more threes than the Mavs would. So the Mavs defense would have to dominate on that end in order for them to win that. And I think they would have to win that a couple of times, maybe 3 times, if they were going to dominate in this fashion.
The 3-point shooting feels like almost everything to me right
now. For the Celtics, it is.
Because that's exactly right. And for the Mavericks, you're going to have to accept and be ready for that they're going to come out firing away, and they're going to have good games where they shoot it well. And you have to be willing to accept that and not necessarily, feed into it and get yourself out of what has worked for you. They're going to have to be really disciplined and stay with the game plan. Bring whatever brought you here, stay with it. Because I think that's the thing. If you feel uncertain about, they just knocked down, 5 threes and we're down by 10 real quick, and you start jacking up threes, which is a little outside of what you want to be doing at this point.
Yeah.
However, you are going to need to hit some shots, and you're going to need PJ Washington. You're going to need Derrick Jones Jr. to be 2 guys that are going to do that too, because Boston goes 6-7 deep with 3-point shooters, and you've got to be able to try to match that. Maybe not player for player in that regard, but they are a very unique team. They will take good ones. They will take bad ones. They will take them in transition. You know you're going to see that from Luka and Kyrie because they can hit those kind of shots, but everybody's got to be super disciplined, I think, in sticking with your game plan and your DNA at this point, and not kind of feed into their game.
That's right. And I think that the one thing that is going in the Mavs' favor in this, right, compared to Mavs teams of the past, the ghosts of Mavs past, the Mavs teams of the past, the other team would hit a 3, the Mavs would miss their 3s, and then they'd hang their head on the other end, and they would just go back on the other end, and all of a sudden you go, oh, the lead is broken open, wide open, because that one team's hitting 3s and the other ones are not. and the Mavs are not. And they would get so discouraged by that. And they've broken out of that so fully because they've won games. They've won playoff games where they shot 26% from three, 29% from three. Like, they do not take all stock in three-pointers the way that they used to. And I think that's something that will help them a lot in this series. But if they do go back to their like old habits, that could be real dangerous for them. And that could mean the Celtics win in some kind of a route. So coming up, I'm gonna make Dana go a little pessimistic route. I'm gonna make her what would happen if the Celtics win in 5. Let's talk about that coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is there for you when you need it. And everybody has things in your life that you need to talk about, work through, that you have anxiety for. If there's something that you just sit at home at night or even during the day, what if the sun is out or not, and you just have this constant thing going through your mind that you just can't get over, something that is eating at you, you may need to talk to somebody, and you may need to talk to a therapist. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. I've used it before. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. I like that I could pick a different time every week. I didn't just have to set up every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Sometimes my schedule is wild and you need somebody that's going to be there for you, but at your time, it's flexible, suited to your schedule, all that. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. That's super helpful. Get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Thanks for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs. It's the One More Thing, the bonus show. If you want to listen to the normal, regular show, we still got that one too, with the Let It Ride music and all that. We're doing what if statements. I'm talking to Dana Larson from Valley Sports about how the Mavs could win in 5 games. We talked through that and what would have to happen. Now, let's go the opposite direction. I know you're the eternal optimist, but let's tap into the dark side a little bit here. Do I need to put the Vader helmet on? What if the Celtics win in? What if the Celtics win in 5 games, Dana?
Well, I think we would all feel disappointed. Disappointment is the emotion that came to mind when I thought about that happening, because you felt something special brewing with this Mavericks team now for a couple of months, and it has led you this far. But you would then probably pretty quickly tip your cap to a very, very good Boston team that has been dominating from start to finish. And I think that you would be able to appreciate just how good this Boston team is. So to me, probably how that would happen was their versatility, their depth, their stars would shine in this game. And maybe, Luka and Kyrie still were really good too. There is going to be a lot riding on what happens from the Mavericks role players. And we're looking at some guys who have certainly never been in anything like this before. You've got some who are playing in their first playoffs ever, much less their first finals, and a 20-year-old rookie who seems fazed by nothing, Dereck Lively. But I think that is a lot to ask, and you wonder how the moment will be. Now, I honestly still think guys like PJ Washington Jr. and Derrick Jones Jr., they want this so bad. They're coming with the right motivation, and they bring, the skills, and they're exactly what this Mavs team needs to be able to fight with a team as good as Boston. But I think that's the one thing, like, will the role players be able to handle the bright lights, the biggest of big stages, having really never been there before. The other thing I wonder too, will they be able to take away the lob threat of the Lively and Gafford? How dangerous those two have been. Will Boston be able to figure out how to remove that? Because that makes Luka so good in so many different ways. And Kristaps Porzingis has been really good defender at the rim, and he's uber motivated to play against his former team. Will Boston be good in the clutch? If they come away with a series win in 5, I'm almost certain they will have found a way to be better in the clutch. And they have been in playoff minutes so far this year, but that's obviously been one of the narratives surrounding Jayson Tatum, and will he be able to live up to the likes of what Luka can do in those moments? So I think those would have to be some of the areas that Boston would be better than Dallas to win a series in 5.
The role players one is just so apt because you start to look through the rosters and you go, all right, the Mavs role players are PJ Washington, never been in a playoff game before. Daniel Gafford played in 5 playoff games for the Bulls. Did you know he played for the Bulls? I don't think everybody knows he played for the Bulls. Bulls fans do. They remind me all the time. So Gafford, lively, 20-year-old rookie. Derrick Jones Jr. has played some playoff games, but was in the back end of the Bulls rotation last season. I mean, he has not been in huge high leverage situation games recently. You look at Jaden Hardy, who's been playing for the Mavericks. Like, you start looking through the Mavs role players and you go, okay, all right, Luka and Kyrie are doing a lot, and they're setting those guys up, and those guys have been put in exactly perfect roles, which is why they're here. And then you compare those guys that I just mentioned to the Celtics role players. Drew Holiday, champion, been there before, has been in big playoff games a lot, has been the point guard for the Pelicans when he was on Anthony Davis's team, went to the Bucks and played with Giannis, and has been in different situations like that. Derek White has been massive, was with them when they went to the finals before, has been huge in different moments. And there have been times when the NBA media gets obsessed with his analytics and says he may be better than Jaylen Brown, one of their best players on the team. Like, they take it to that level. Then you have Al Horford. He's been there before and been everywhere and been, in the league for a long time. Then Porzingis, he has not been there before, but like, he's a role player for them at this point, where he was an all-star and all that. Like, they just have those 4 guys just stand out so much when you just compare them 1-to-1 with the Mavs role players. And I think you're right. That would have to happen. Those 4 guys have to fully, just thoroughly outplay those other 4 guys to the point where it wouldn't matter if the Mavs 2 stars outplay the Celtics 2 stars, which even that is not a guarantee, because those 2 guys for the Celtics are very good.
Absolutely. And I mean, I can't wait to watch the matchups, on Luka and Kyrie. Just because you really can't take much away from the regular season games that these 2 teams played, but it really was. Luka was great, but all I remember thinking was how good Jaylen Brown was, how good Drew Holiday is just a guy you can't, it just feels like an absolute luxury for them to have someone like that. And I think there were so many of those moments that I really felt like the Mavericks players, they're all going to have to take it even one step up. They've been playing at a really high level. This is going to be ×2. This will be every single moment. There can be no empty possessions at all. The margin for error will be razor thin in every single one of these games. You will have to play the best games of your lives every single night out there to pull this off.
I think the playing in the clutch is an interesting angle in this, because it has been sort of like a demon for the Celtics team, where they went 21-12 in the regular season in the clutch, which is the 4th best record in the regular season. You go, okay, but they were a 64-win team. They lost
blowing out teams. Yeah.
Right. They did not lose many. They lost 18 games total. So that means 12 out of their 18 games that they lost were clutch games. They couldn't get it done in the clutch. They had an opportunity to, which is, good for them and all that, and won a ton of games, but they just have these games sometimes where you walk away, and I would listen to Locked On Celtics and he would go, what were they doing? Like, what? This team kind of beat themselves. And even in the playoffs, the couple of games they lost, you go, why are they doing this? Why are they in a clutch game? Why are they in a clutch game with the Pacers without Tyrese Halliburton? Like, what is this team doing? Why don't they take care of business in front of them? And they would have, the Celtics, if they win in 5, would have to completely put that narrative to bed, beat the Mavericks in that. And the Mavericks were 23-9 in the regular season in the clutch. They were better. They didn't have a better record than the Celtics by a lot, but they've been better in the clutch. And I think that's the case for the Mavericks to win this, whereas the Celtics would have to completely put that to bed and not lose games in the clutch like they have in the regular season and beat the Mavericks. Like, that's the 2 different sides of it, I think.
I agree totally with that. And if you were asking me to bet my house on which duo I would want putting up a shot, to win a game.
Put the house on it.
I'm putting the house on Kyrie or Luka way over Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum. Just historically, they have done it time and time again. And in Jayson Tatum's one, that you really don't necessarily feel all that confident about, especially with his 3-point shooting right now in the postseason has not been great. He's actually been one of their worst 3-point shooters in the playoffs, and he takes a lot of them. So he is, obviously somebody that that I'm fascinated to see how he comes out in this series.
Yeah, let us know in the comment section. What if the Mavs win in 5? What if the Celtics win in 5? What would have to happen? I'm curious what you guys would have to say about that, especially if you're here with a shamrock in your display name on YouTube. That's I'm very interested to see what you would have to say about it. I got a couple other random ones that I wanted to talk about that I didn't get to with Reggie. What if Kid relies on Maxi at the 5 a lot? Like, what if all of a sudden he's playing 20, 25 minutes at the 5? From your vantage point, do you see that as a good thing or a bad thing for the Mavs?
Well, I'm hoping it won't be because of injury. God forbid.
Sure.
One of the other two, right? Foul trouble perhaps could be an issue there too. The one thing that made me think of was they know how tough defensively they are going to have to be. And in Maxi, opponents have shot 29% against Maxi Kleber in the playoffs. The expected field goal percentage of those shots is 49%. It's the second biggest differential among players. So Maxi makes a difference. He makes you take tough shots and makes you often miss tough shots. So I can see where, and that's why we always look at Jason Kidd, who really loves to have Maxi Kleber out there in big moments, in big games. The other thing I thought of, though, too, was if you are trying to keep up with the Celtics 3-point shooting.
Yes.
Are you maybe looking towards your stretch 5 a little bit more, a big that can shoot the 3? And we know Maxi can go on a trademark playoff heater for long range.
Out of nowhere.
Nowhere. And if you may have a chance of getting one of those games where Maxi Kleber gives you 5 threes, or who even knows, goes 8 for 11 like he did against Utah. Maybe there is some thought in that, and that's why you might see more minutes from Maxi Kleber.
Yeah, I just keep going back to this, that I hope that they don't rely on it. Like you said, if it's outside of injuries, outside of foul trouble to the Mavs 2 centers, I hope that you don't have to go to Maxi too much at the 5, because you just need that advantage of the roll gravity of Gafford and Lively, the rebounding of Gafford and Lively. That's where you get an advantage. The Mavs this year have just not found the advantage with playing that 5-out system. It just has not given them the same kind of results they've had in the past, which is weird. Maybe that changes against a different defense. Maybe that changes against, the Celtics, who want to take a bunch of threes. But yeah, Maxi will play, but I hope he plays next to one of the centers, and I hope that they spread the floor in that way. If he relies on Maxi at the 5 a lot, I think that it could lead to high-scoring games that I don't think the Mavs will win those games. That to me is what I think it would end up being.
Well, and in thinking through this matchup with Boston too, again, you kind of come back to sometimes worrying that here we're going to be saying, oh, shoot, the best defense against them is going to be your offense, because it is so hard to limit what
the beginning of the season
is going to do, right? And that's a little bit of the fear, that they are going to be so good offensively that it's going to be so hard to limit their threes that you're going to start to really want to push the scoring up on your end. And, just maybe it's a game of keep up at that point, and you don't know how that's going to play out for Dallas.
Got another statement. What if the Mavs just make Tatum and Brown beat them in the mid-range, similar to what the Mavs tried to do to SGA in the second round, where they ran him off the 3-point line. They're like, all right, just beat us in these contested one-on-one mid-range jumpers. We know that you can't beat a one-on-one the same way that Luka can. And so we'll just let you play the one-on-one and stay home at all the rest of it. All your other role players, the Jrue Holiday, the Derek White, the Porzingis, we're not letting them get going. You have to do it, and it's got to be hard. What if the Mavs just try and do that against those two guys?
I think you live with it. If that's the case, I mean, maybe if you want them in the paint and maybe taking those shots rather than forcing rotations and kicking the ball out and finding open threes for those guys. It's tough you don't want to overcommit, to trying to guard those guys in the paint. I think maybe it's a similar game plan where you let them cook and then you do try to shut down everybody else. It's interesting too, though. They actually are first in field goal percentage in the paint in the playoffs, but last in the percentage of their shots that come in the paint.
Get a lot there.
So that they're thinking behind it and the way they game plan that kind of thing. I mean, I think you worry more about the 3-point shooting that those guys can potentially generate, and the rest of the team too, than you do with them in the mid range.
I think this is what the Mavericks will do. I think they'll try to make Tatum and Brown just beat them. All right, you've got to break PJ Washington, Derrick Jones Jr., or a switch with Luka and Kyrie. You've got to break them down off the dribble and hit a tough contested mid-range jumper. And you've got to do that. And I think if the Mavs can do that and those two guys fall into that a lot, then I think that's a winning formula for the Mavericks. You're not going to stop Tatum and Brown. They're going to hit a bunch of these mid-range jumpers. SGA hit the majority of his mid-range jumper, like over 50% and probably more than that of his mid-range jumpers in that series. But one of the reasons why the Mavs lost is that Jalen Williams did not follow SGA's lead in that and did not hit enough of those. So I think if the Mavericks make Tatum and Brown beat them in that way, I think one of them has to be bad, right? Like one of them has to be either worse than he's been or worse than you expect or worse than they were in the regular season. And I don't know which one it is. Tatum hasn't shot the 3 ball well. Brown has struggled in the past, in finals and things. And so I think that one of those guys would have to struggle in order for the Mavs to win out if that's your strategy. Last one. This is not a what if, this is just a question. Broke the rule. Who is more likely to have a massive finals moment? So like a Brian Cardinal, Peja Stojakovic, like just a moment in the finals where we look back and this person becomes a legend because of what they did. Jaden Hardy, Tim Hardaway Jr., or Dante Exum?
I mean, you have to go with Hardy right now. I just feel like the way things have been trending. I don't know that we're going to see much of Tim Hardaway Jr. There may be limited minutes for Dante Exum, but it really looks like Jaden Hardy is working his way into an interesting, trusted, small minutes kind of a role under Jayson Kidd, and he doesn't look uncomfortable in it at all. He looks ready, and I feel like his game too kind of would allow for, you called it a massive finals moment. So I'm thinking, the way he hits shots, the way he is so fearless. He will be almost that ignorance is bliss kind of kid, who's probably doing something that may be just a little bit over his pay grade, but pull it off. And I could see us celebrating a Hardy party in the finals.
Oh, that would be just so insane. It would make no sense for what the regulars, like you look at the regular season for what Hardy brought. And I've talked about him so much after the Timberwolves series and during it and the moments that he had, but to see him go from like kind of out of the rotation, he averaged like 7 minutes a game the last like 30 games or so. He just kind of really fell out of the rotation. Didn't seem as confident as normal in his shot. He looked better in his rookie year than he did this past year. To then like barely play at the beginning of the playoffs, to then have a crucial role in the Timberwolves series, and now to be on the cusp of getting finals minutes is just insane. But I could see him hitting 2 threes in a quarter, hitting, getting 3 out like lob passes that the Celtics just aren't ready for because they're not ready for him to be the secondary ball handler off of a Luka or Kyrie that are getting all the attention. I could see him having a couple moments like that because he just had them for the Timberwolves. My case for Tim Hardaway, though, is if we do get into a 3-point shootout and Kidd goes back to Tim Hardaway in some way, then maybe he finally has the same kind of moment he had against OKC. This is not like unfounded. We have seen Tim Hardaway have a moment like this already in these playoffs. And it was few and far between. It was once, but we have seen him have a moment where he hits a couple of threes, he hits a jumper, things like that. Maybe it happens in the finals. Maybe it's something they go to if all of a sudden the Celtics just start raining down threes and they need to go to somebody. The only case for Exum, I don't know if there's a case for Exum right now. Just the way he's playing, he gets 3 or 4 minutes a game in these just to spell Luka or Kyrie. It just has not looked. He just has not looked the same way he did in the regular season now, and I don't think there's a case for him in the finals.
I agree, and I think they have wanted Two, they have kind of given him some moments to try to work his way back to feeling comfortable, finding his way, finding how he fits. And it just either there just hasn't been enough, the playoffs, the stakes are so high that you can't afford to let, one particular stretch of game minutes go out into 4 or 5 or 6 or another turnover or a bad foul. You can't. The margin for error again is too slim. And I think unfortunately he's just not been able to find that rhythm. And you're right. I mean, I guess I wouldn't be all that shocked about Tim Hardaway Jr. because I feel like that's a guy who can hit a shot. He can definitely come up. He is a goldfish, the shortest memory that there is, and he'll be ready to fire away. That we know. He will be ready to fire away.
He definitely will. He definitely. Tim, if you're listening, just don't dribble against Derek White and Drew Holiday. Just don't. That's all I ask. That's all I ask. There you go. Let us know in the comment section on YouTube what you think about if the Mavs win in 5, if the Celtics win in 5, what would have to happen on either of those. We'll be back with more Locked On Mavs, just continuing. Follow on this feed wherever you're listening to. Thanks to Dana Larson. We'll have her back during the finals at some point. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.